Justified by God. Noah believed in God and as a result became a righteous person. He was right with God, with others, and with himself. None of the worldly people are right with God, with others, or with themselves. However, Noah was a righteous man, and Hebrews 11:7 says that he became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. Firstly, Noah found grace. Secondly, because God had been transfused into him. He believed in God. Because God's believing element was transfused into him, Noah had the believing faculty. He believed in God, and immediately his believing was reckoned unto him by God as righteousness as God did with Abraham. Moreover, because he found grace in the eyes of the Lord, this grace strengthened him and helped him to live a righteous life. In his daily walk, righteousness was lived out of him. This kind of righteousness was not merely objective, but also subjective. Firstly, he received objective righteousness. Eventually, he lived up subjective righteousness. Thus, in the eyes of God, Noah inherited righteousness. In the 6th chapter of Genesis, we see three important seeds: flesh, grace, and righteousness. This matter of the flesh is fully developed in the New Testament, particularly in the epistles, and especially in Romans 7 and 8. Since we have covered this in the life study of Romans, we need not to repeat it now. Do you realize that God's grace came because of the flesh? The Word became flesh and tabernacled among us, full of grace. In a good sense, where there is flesh, there is grace. What is flesh? The flesh is Satan's masterpiece. Do you know where Satan is today? He is in our flesh. The flesh is the meeting hall of Satan, sin, and death. These three great enemies continually meet together in the hall of our flesh, and their meeting is never dismissed. I cannot tell you how many thousands of years this meeting has been going on. The flesh is such an ugly thing. What then is grace? Grace is God Himself enjoyed by us and helping us to face the situation of the flesh. In a sense, if there were no flesh, grace would not be so much needed. If it were not for the flesh, probably God would not have to give so much of grace. We have seen that, according to Hebrews 4:16, we may find grace to meet our timely need. What element causes us to need grace is mainly the flesh. I sympathize with the young people, for I was once a young man myself. As I passed through all the human experiences, I came to realize how much we are in the flesh. Although I do not like to be in the flesh is here. Once I got mad at the Lord and said to him, Lord, why don't you take away my flesh? Eventually he showed me that in a sense I needed the flesh, for the flesh is the very factor that compels me to come to the throne of grace. I cannot do anything with this flesh. All I can do is go to the throne of grace. Although there is nothing that we can do, yet there is somewhere that we can go, the throne of grace. If you read the New Testament carefully, you will see that where the flesh is, there also is grace. This is especially true in the book of Galatians. Galatians 5:4 says that if we attempt to be justified by the law, we have fallen from grace. We are in the flesh. Galatians deals with this matter of the flesh, and it also speaks much about the matter of grace. Do not say that you do not have the flesh. You have a great deal of flesh. Even as you read this message, you have the flesh to contend with. What shall we do? Let us come to the throne of grace for the sake of dealing with the flesh. Because the flesh is here with us, we need grace. The flesh is the very presence of the devil, and grace is the very presence of God. In order for us to face the presence of Satan, we need the presence of God. Where is Satan? Do not think that Satan is far away from you. He is within you. Every minute, even while you are praying, Satan is in your flesh. A good number of times my prayers have been frustrated by the flesh, even in the holiest time, the time of prayer. The flesh is a frustration. This frustration of the flesh forces us to come to the throne of grace. Although the flesh is the presence of Satan, over and against it we have grace, which is the presence of God. How strong are you? Are you strong enough to overcome Satan? Do you think that you can deal with him? Forget such thoughts. Satan is much greater than we are. Although Satan is greater than we are, God is greater than Satan. God is the greatest. Since Satan is here with us, we need God to be present. We have to say, Lord, you know your enemy is right here. You have to come and stand with me against him. When God comes to us and stands with us, that is grace.